Hey guys, Roman Reaper here. So I've just got done watching A Working Man on Prime Video. This is the newest film directed by David Ayer. He co-wrote this with Sylvester Stallone. It's also notably Ayer's second collaboration with Jason Statham, following on from last year's The Beekeeper, which was quite a pleasant surprise. It was hardly an amazing, groundbreaking film, but I enjoyed it quite a bit because it was just like sort of in on just how stupid it was. So I had a lot of fun with it for that very reason, and I was hoping that this would deliver more of the same, a dumb, switch your brain off action film that's also perhaps a little bit, self-aware about what it is. But does this deliver every bit the fun of Ayer and Statham's last collaboration? Let's find out. So the film follows Levin Cade, who, following on from the death of his wife, has been taken under the wing of Joe Garcia, who runs a construction firm based in Chicago, with the Garcias basically being like family to Levin. However, one day, after a night out partying with some friends, Joe's daughter Jenny is kidnapped, of which he asks Levin to help find her. And so, he does. But he discovers that the operation goes deeper when he uncovers a human trafficking ring being run by Russian gangsters. And so, calling upon his skills as a former Royal Marine, he sets about taking out the Russians and bringing the girl home alive. So look, when you're going into a new Jason Statham film, there are certain expectations, you very much know what to expect, and A Working Man does deliver on that well enough. But that being said, The Beekeeper was better. Like, this doesn't reach anywhere near the just brilliantly absurd heights of that film, because that was a film that had a bee pun delivered by way of Shakespeare.
To be or not to be? Isn't that the bloody question? Think I'll take to be.
Absolute cinema. This is decidedly not as good as that. Now look, the sort of, core plot of the film, the very much the driving force, Jason Statham versus human trafficking Russian gangsters. That is pretty engaging, and, it's very much at its strongest when, it's very much him on the case, actively working to uncover this, shady network. Unfortunately, though, the journey is less straightforward than it was in The Beekeeper, with an abundance of subplots, one of which involving Levin trying to keep custody of his daughter, which I don't want to say doesn't go anywhere, because it does in the final act, but at the same time, there was something potentially interesting there they could have really leaned into, maybe how Levin's instincts as a father shapes how, he takes on this case and how he sets about rescuing his friend slash boss's daughter, but it doesn't. As a result, the whole thing just kind of feels a bit half-baked. There's also another subplot where he pretends to be a drug dealer in order to get closer to these Russian gangsters, but it kind of just feels like unnecessary extra steps to get to where we know the plot is gonna go. Not helping matters is that the film plays itself decidedly very straight, and I get it, human trafficking is a very serious subject, and there's a certain weight that you kind of have to deliver on, but it means that the film is much less fun than The Beekeeper, which is a shame because when it kind of leans into the absurdity, it's having an absolute blast. Like, the villains, these Russian gangsters are just so over the top. It's absolutely amazing. You've got, like, Jason Fleming as this, very angry, high-ranking gangster. He's also a bit of a wife-beater who, in quite a funny gag, has karma come his way. There's also these other two who wear these quite flamboyant, brightly coloured tracksuits who refer to, like, shootouts as being bang bang time. a standout moment is, I shit you not, this overweight gangster who wears like a full like top and tails, looking exactly like the Penguin. When that happened, I just genuinely let out a little chuckle. When the film's very much leaning into stuff like that, that's when the film is at its most fun. It's just a shame it doesn't do it more. I will say though, Jason Statham does a commendable job as always as Levin. He's very much doing the Jason Statham performance. That's the same performance he gives in The Beekeeper. The same performance he gives in like the Fast and Furious movies, and you bet he's gonna do it here. And yeah, he does it very well. It's pretty much second nature at this point. And he has that sort of element of physicality that, really allows him to command the action, whether it be an early brawl on a construction site or a fight scene showing his skill sets in a, biker bar out in the country. He's very much, has not lost it at all, He is as cool and capable as ever. And, I quite enjoyed the sort of, like, tender moments he has with Michael Pena as Garcia. I perhaps would have liked a few more scenes with him, to see his perspective on the ongoing case. But for the screen time he is good. I also quite enjoyed David Harbour's role as this, old war buddy of Levin's, who is blind. Yeah, look, when David Harbour shows up and stuff, it's always very entertaining, and this is no exception. It's also, to its credit, very, very well shot. There's some really great looking shots here, especially plenty of shots of the moon. It is a big old moon. But the film, I think, very much comes into its own. The first 2/3, kind of overstuffed as they are, do build to where the film very much reaches its element. This just absolute blast of a final act, in which, you get exactly what you've come for. Jason Statham taking on Russian gangsters, and it is every bit as satisfying as you'd expect. You've got these, like, crazy shootouts and, like, grenades, explosions, and just every bit as bloody as you'd expect. A particularly great kill involves him, like, jamming a knife right into a guy's throat. It is brilliant, and it's very much where the film really leans in to the fun of it all. And yeah, it very much is enough to save it from being a total waste. And it also leaves it kind of open enough for a sequel, while also very much resolving, like, Levin's arc of the film and tying it together neatly. So I would perhaps like to see more, but I definitely like, if we get a follow-up, for it to be more like the third act of the film rather than the first two. Overall, A Working Man is fine. It does the job well enough, but its overly serious tone and overstuffed plot prevent it from really reaching the entertaining heights of The Beekeeper. Still, it's worth it for a fairly committed Jason Statham and an absolutely gonzo final act. Out of 10, A Working Man gets a 6. So yeah, let me know down in the comments, have you seen A Working Man? What did you think of it? What did you think of it in comparison to The Beekeeper? And would you like to see any follow-ups to this? Because I know this is apparently based on a series of books. And would you like to see Ayer and Statham work together on more action films like this in the future? Let me know all that down in the comments. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you're new, and don't forget to turn on post notifications so you don't miss an upload.